I consider myself the presumptive nominee, absolutely. I started off with 17. I'm down now. I'm winning it. It's over. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. These two guys cannot win. There's no path.
That was Donald Trump celebrating a sweep of victories in the Northeast, breaking well above 50% and exceeding expectations in every state. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton is close to securing her party's nomination, yet Bernie Sanders says he's determined to go all the way to the end. Here to give us their take on the state of this wild and woolly race, our radio talk show host and editor-in-chief of LifeZette, Laura Ingraham, and senior editor of The Atlantic and chairman of Policy Exchange, David Frum. Thank you both for being here. I'm delighted you could come along, and I'll just wave to you, David. My arm's not that long. Look, after Trump's victory, and we saw 54% in Maryland, 57% in Pennsylvania, 64% in Rhode Island, is this the end? I mean, could this be an outright win before the convention, the much-touted, brokered convention?
It's a pretty steep climb for Ted Cruz at this point. It's mathematically impossible at the convention that Ted Cruz could maybe have turned enough delegates to win this on a second or third ballot, but I don't know. I just think I mean, they had trouble securing a deal with John Kasich. I mean, I'm not all that convinced that Ted Cruz has 1,237 committed right now. They're going to die on the hill of Ted Cruz at that convention. If he can't secure the deal with Kasich, that thing fell apart as soon as it was made. It's kind of hard to see that they can really rely on 1,237 delegates at the convention. And even if that did happen, I think you'd see such a fractured party. Hillary would, without a doubt, win.
David, from A, did you ever think we'd be here? And B, is it possible for anyone other than Trump to take this nomination, considering the large number of delegates he's racking up, even if he's beneath that 1,237 threshold?
No, to the first question. And yes, but faintly yes to the second. The problem with the plan to stop Donald Trump was it was always too complicated. It has been clear now for some weeks that there was one plan to stop Donald Trump, and that was for everyone in the Republican Party to swallow whatever objections they might have and rally around the second-place candidate, Ted Cruz. But the actual plan that the party had, many people in the party had, was to give Cruz just enough support to stop Trump, and then at the convention to insert somebody else, a third person or a fourth person, because we would get to the convention with probably Trump in first place, Cruz in second place, Kasich maybe in third, Marco Rubio in fourth, and then some, and it was just always
some magical figure on a white horse.
Well, we know it wasn't so magical. We know who it was, but it was too complicated, and it was too in bad faith that if the party wanted to stop Donald Trump, it had to stop him by rallying around Ted Cruz. That was the choice, whether they liked it or not. And too many didn't like it, and so Trump is the likeliest outcome at this point.
Okay, I have to show you this because it seems...
I have one question. Where's Marco Rubio? Has anyone seen him? I mean, is he in the witness protection program?
Apparently,
he endorses Ted Cruz.
And he's in absentia.
Wait a second. We got this Latino population in California. I must have missed all those speeches that Rubio was doing, and Bush, Mr. Amnesty. Where are all these speeches?
Why do you think he's so quiet these days, Marco Rubio?
Marco Rubio's probably thinking that Trump's going to lose, and they're preparing to run Rubio again in 2020. Jeb's, I don't think at that point probably going to run, but Marco would probably run again. And otherwise, if Trump is the big threat to the country and the world, why wouldn't they all be, as David said, out there working for Cruz? The conservatives never unified around one alternative.
That's exactly right.
They needed one alternative. If I heard one more time our friend Bill Kristol say the more the merrier, or George Will, all these people are like, the more the merrier in the race. I kept saying, why is it the more the merrier? You need one alternative to, at that time I thought the establishment candidate. To the establishment candidate, that was before Trump got in. But then once they wanted to kill off Trump, you can't kill him off with 10 people.
Look, I'm probably the biggest rhino squish ever to sit in this chair. Okay, so for universal health.
It's an endangered species, by the way. After Trump, endangered.
But no, because actually, that's a complicated question. Is he or isn't he? But the point was, I was saying, you need to that people, if you don't want Trump, people of all points of view need to swallow their they need to be disciplined. I mean, politics is not a place for expressive theater. It is not a place where you get your wishes granted.
Somebody better tell Donald Trump that. He's been running expressive theater for months.
there's a lot about Ted Cruz that doesn't appeal to me. But if the alternative has been clear for a long time, Cruz, Trump, and for me the choice was Cruz. And yet people who are much closer to him ideologically could never have the discipline to do that.
Okay, I need to roll this for both of you. Following their wins on Tuesday, Trump and Clinton turned their attention not to their opponents, but to each other. Watch.
The only card she has is the woman's card. She's got nothing else going. And frankly, if Hillary Clinton were a man, I don't think she'd get 5% of the vote.
Now, the other day, Mr. Trump accused me of playing the, quote, woman card. Well, if fighting for women's health care and paid family leave and equal pay is playing the woman card, then deal me in.
Oh, boy. Well, a little gravelly there at the finish. Is this a smart move for Trump to invoke the women's issue, considering how he's running with women?
I think he's trying to draw them out again on the woman's issue. We remember the last time that they went after Trump on the woman's issue. I mean, he strafed Bill Clinton so badly. I mean, I don't think he was in the offices of the Clinton Foundation for weeks after that. So it could play both ways. I mean, obviously you can't do the whole campaign playing the woman card thing. But, I mean, Hillary had to come out and react to it. And, I mean, I don't know how popular Hillary is with women. I guess we'll see, but I know the last poll that just came out, Donald Trump is in a statistical tie right now with Hillary Clinton. And when the party starts unifying behind him, maybe except for David, I think people are going to make a choice between, what he offered in his foreign policy and the more Clinton, probably hawkish foreign policy.
How do you think they run against each other? How does this play out?
I think each is the other's dream opponent. And it's a symbiote. And we saw that. I mean, now when you ask the question, why did Donald Trump do this or that thing? I mean, he's often doing it because it's his nature. That there isn't always a strategic plan. But in this case, there is something about women opponents who really get under his skin. That was true with Carly Fiorina. That's true with others. And he goes after them in a more savage way than he does even with his male opponents. And in Hillary Clinton's case, she is trying to reignite the Obama coalition that is going to be less excited about her. The most troubling strategic fact for Democrats about this election was that between 2008 and 2012, President Obama's vote dropped by about 3.7 million. There's only about a 900,000 pickup on the Republican side. 2.6 million votes disappeared. It would have been even worse for President Obama, but for this huge last-minute surge of older black voters. Black voters came out in even greater numbers for him in 2012 than in 2008.
Will they stay for Hillary?
And that, of course not. Of course not, because the voters he got, I mean, Obama had a fantastic turnout of black voters in 2008. In 2012, people were coming in with their IV drip units. I mean, these were these were people who, by the way, I want to say, I completely commend this. This is loyalty. I mean, this is you kept faith with us,
or you get my double helping of mashed potatoes at lunch.
You're keeping, we keep faith with you. You keep faith with us. So I applaud this. But the fact is, it was a heroic surge. The black voter turnout in 2012 was higher than white voter turnout for the only time in American history.
And there has been also the turnout we're seeing in these primaries.
The Republican turnout is historic.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's the biggest
everyone can talk about, well, this is horrible. Well, last time I checked, this is what you want. You want huge crowds to show up in stadiums. You want people to be excited. You want people to tell their friends. You want people to be more engaged on the issues. And you want people not to listen, frankly, to every talking head they see on television and think for themselves. I think a lot of people are, frankly, thinking for themselves this time around. And Donald Trump isn't perfect. Donald Trump has lots of issues. We all do. But I think people have looked at the last, 15 years of American economic and foreign policy, and they've had quite enough.
And the last 17 Republican possibilities.
Yeah, they're saying no to Obama's economic policy. They're saying no to George Bush's foreign policy, and frankly, a lot of his economic policy. And Trump laid waste to that.
I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that later, David. That's coming.
I'm not going to disagree with that much of that.
We'll get into that because that's the foreign policy in Trump's speech, which I want to talk about. The day after Trump's victory, Ted Cruz, talking about somebody thinking for themselves, seeking to break the Trump stranglehold hold on the media and to resurrect his sagging campaign, announced that Carly Fiorina would be his running mate, should he secure the nomination. Now, this sounds to me a little bit like announcing the designer of the wedding dress before you propose to the girl. But, I mean, does this help him at all?
Well, Laura a minute ago was saying we shouldn't listen to the egghead elitists. And the thing is, if you listen to the egghead elitist political scientists, they will tell you no vice presidential choice in history has ever made a difference at all. And guess what? On this one, they were right. Of course, it doesn't help. It didn't help. It didn't help Walter Mondale when he chose Geraldine Ferraro. It didn't help John McCain to pick Sarah Palin.
Yeah, but they did that after they got the nomination. Only Reagan pulled this one, and he lost.
It didn't help Reagan with Richard Schweiker. It's not a technique that works. It is not as exciting to the voters as it is to the commentariat.
Laura, I want to play this for you, and I want your reaction to this
Lloyd Benson really moved.
Lloyd Benson was your guy. This is Carly Fiorina. She wasted no time emphasizing not only who she and Ted were running against, but that there is more at stake than just who wins the Republican nomination.
Ted Cruz could not be more right in what he said. There is a lot at stake, and in fact, this is a fight. This is a fight for the soul of our party and the future of our nation. You know, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, they are two sides of the same coin. They're both liberal, we know that. But, you know, Hillary Clinton, like so many politicians, Hillary Clinton has made her millions selling access and influence from inside the system. And Donald Trump has made his billions buying people like Hillary Clinton.
Does this play, Laura Ingraham, does this help work Trump's greatest weakness, which is his 69% deficit with female voters?
I don't think so. Carly Fiorina ran against Barbara Boxer in California and came out of that race in 2010, which was a Republican year. And California is a tough state, no doubt. But she came away with a 1 million vote deficit. Now, I think she's gotten better than that Senate race. She's a lot better. But the fact of that matter is, while she was, I think, a fine debater, and she's a smart woman, the thing that she's known for is the thing that's playing really badly right now. I mean, Manafort came on my radio show today and said she's the queen of outsourcing. I mean, that's just... and she has a good defense to what they're saying about the HP job loss as a compact deal with that. But when you're really, your one thing that you're known for is being a female CEO of a Fortune 500 company, and that tenure did not end, at least on the surface. And I know there's a deeper story there. That's difficult. Trump's had his own, business problems. We all know that, and they're going to make a lot of hay out of that. But I think David's right. This looks like we're going to hurry up so you all get ready for us. And she didn't have any delegates. She didn't win any delegates.
Yeah, she couldn't break out of her own pack in this race. But you had the picture of them both wave. It looks like they're accepting the nomination, David. I guess that was the point.
That's the point. And to look like this is a real thing that could really happen, as opposed to this strange thing that is the Trump campaign, which every day something happens there that is just jaw-droppingly unbelievable. The foreign policy speech which Laura attended, which had the Russian ambassador in a more honored place than the ambassador from any of America's allies and friends. That's a strange thing.
Unpredictable.
It's unpredictable.
Building bridges.
But that line you quoted, I think, is a key to what is going wrong here. When Carly Fiorina described Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton as both liberals, what is going on is that the political categories that we have become used to over 30 years are dissolving in front of our eyes. And Donald Trump has given everyone fair warning. He's going to adopt a lot of the Bernie Sanders economic message. And I don't know that it's going to make sense to talk about what is about to happen using language that was developed to describe the elections of 1976 and 1980 and 1984.
Well, I think
I mean, the foreign policy speech was unconventional. On the one hand, he's very aggressive, Laura. On the other hand,
I disagree with that. I mean, I think it's actually much more Reagan-esque, and I think Craig Shirley, Reagan biographer, agrees with this. It's much more Reagan-esque than Bush-like. I mean, his foreign policy, when Bush came in, and David remembers this, he wrote a book about it. I'm going to have a humble foreign policy. Obviously, 9/11 happened. A lot happened. But the last thing you would ever describe George W. Bush's foreign policy is humble. And I think that the reality is right now, America has seen 15 years of globalization, massive trade deals, seemingly unending foreign intervention in the Middle East, and they see chaos on the economic home front with no GDP to speak of. They see a foreign policy in total disarray, and Trump says, this hasn't worked. I'm going to do something that's America-centered, America-focused. We're going to rebuild our military. I think it's much more peace through strength than it is, let's.
He said it's America first, David, and that this is time to worry about the homeland first. What's wrong with that?
He said a number of things.
Yeah.
The thing that I found sort of exemplified what I thought was glaring about the speech was he has a paragraph in which he says, we're going to demand that our allies spend more. And if they don't, we're not going to defend them. And then in the very next paragraph, he said our allies no longer think of us as reliable. Well, maybe that's because of the thing you said in your very last paragraph, if you can remember that far back. What he's talking about here, here's where it is not Reagan-esque. Reagan had moments that were like this. Trump is talking about dissolving the global security structure that has worked since 1945. And while he's attacking a lot of things that are clearly not working, Laura and I think have often welcomed his creative effect on the immigration debate, which was not a debate until he made it a debate. Good for him on that one. And he put the issue of wages into the center of the political discussion. Good for him. And he also is, to my delight, I'm not sure how Laura feels about this, he's shown Republicans they cannot have the Ryan approach to health care coverage that that Americans need more health care security than they've got, and government is going to have to be involved in providing that. But when you're talking about dissolving the global structure of democracy and peace that has worked since the end of World War II, that is a very frightening
He didn't say
thing.
dissolve it, though. He said pay 3% of your GDP, devote 3% of your GDP to defense. How is that dissolving the global structure? It's like we can't pay for everybody.
I'm going to let him speak for himself. Here's a little bite of Donald Trump. His first public policy speech, reading from a prompter at the Mayflower Hotel. Laura, you were there. I want to get your reaction. Roll that.
My foreign policy will always put the interests of the American people and American security above all else. Has to be first. Has to be. That will be the foundation of every single decision that I will make. America first will be the major and overriding theme of my administration. Secondly, our allies are not paying their fair share, and I've been talking about this recently a lot. Our allies must contribute toward their financial, political, and human costs, have to do it, of our tremendous security burden. But many of them are simply not doing so.
He talked about defeating ISIS. He talked about working with countries like China and Russia. David, as you said, Russia had an exalted place there. Seems to be trying to indicate the message of the talk. What's wrong with this? Is it breaking orthodoxy? You have Lindsey Graham and others saying Ronald Reagan spinning in his grave.
Yeah, well, when's the last time Lindsey Graham was right about, I'm sorry, but most foreign policy issues Lindsey Graham's been involved with, he's gotten horrifically wrong. And Donald Trump's saying, we are $19 trillion in debt. That is a reality. That is not some just ephemeral number. That's real. We cannot allow the world to freeload or free ride on our goodwill. We love our allies, but they've got to contribute a little bit, just a little bit of their GDP. And if they don't do that, then we have to make some decisions for ourselves. I mean, we want to do things, whether it's health care or care for the elderly or the indigent. We want to be able to take care of the home front. Infrastructure is crumbling in this country, and we need to spend money on that. It's not dissolving the alliances. I don't think he wants to do that, but he wants to do it smarter.
David,
whether he can do it or not,
he
we'll
savaged
see.
both Obama's foreign policy as well as George W. Bush's. Doesn't that put him as the ultimate outsider? Doesn't that draw the independents and the disaffected people in both parties?
Yeah, but sometimes you can be an outsider because you're saying something really reckless, dangerous, and uninformed. And I want to put my finger on this Russia matter. Right now, there's a shooting war going on the European continent, in Ukraine. About 8,000 people dead, unknown numbers of others wounded. Ukraine is not an ally of the United States, but it is an emerging democracy. It's a country to which the United States has made very specific guarantees in return for its surrender of its nuclear weapons. It's an associate member of the European Union. The Russians are fighting a violent war there, and they are penetrating political systems all across the developed world. We know that there is a loan of tens of millions of dollars from a Russian state-owned bank to the National Front in France. They penetrate other political systems in the same way, and it's going on here. And it is very disturbing to me that people who have had senior positions with pro-Putin friends in Russia and in the former Soviet states have incredibly senior roles in the Trump campaign. That is disturbing.
He spent a piece of his foreign policy speech talking about the genocide of Christians in the Middle East, something that it took the Obama administration many years to admit. They only just did so recently. Watch this clip. I want to see how you think this plays and to whom he's addressing this.
We've made the Middle East more unstable and chaotic than ever before. We left Christians subject to intense persecution and even genocide. We have done nothing to help the Christians, nothing. And we should always be ashamed for that lack of action.
What was the reaction in the room to that? Who's he playing to?
Yeah, well, I think he's playing to religious voters. I mean, the word shame there stood out to me. We should always be ashamed of that. There was like a gut punch, I think, to this administration, but also I think just to all of us who feel like this is all going on. And what are we doing to help these people? We're bringing in all these refugees into the United States. Obama increased the number. And as far as I can tell, like 93% are Muslim or 98% are Muslim, something like that. I mean, should we take any of the Christians in? And if not, why not? Well, I mean, these people are actually going to be completely obliterated from their ancestral homelands. The Nineveh Plain, which our friend Christopher Hitchens wrote about so eloquently and beautifully when he was still alive. I mean, they've all been scattered from there and oppressed, and it's disgusting.
The refugee process begins by showing up at a UN center to be tallied and registered. Those centers are places where Christian refugees are often afraid to go.
Right.
And so they don't enter the mouth of the pipeline, so they don't even get considered for refugee status in any of the programs, especially not the American one, and that's a real shame. But Trump, in that speech, made a transition from something that he started saying something that was really false and outrageous, which is that it's the United States' fault that Christians are being persecuted in the Middle East? No. Is it true that the United States hasn't done much to help?
Right.
Yes. But the first statement, which is the more powerful one, that's false. And
Which is what?
Which is that this is that it is America that set in motion the persecution of the Christians of the Middle East.
Well, he would say that the Iraq policy and George W. Bush's decision to go in destabilized the region and did wipe out these native populations that had been there for centuries. That's true.
It's not true.
Why not? If we hadn't gone into Iraq, the Christians would still be living there.
Because it started 30 years earlier. That's why it's not true. Because what has been happening is with the rise of a specifically Islamic consciousness in the Arab countries, that you've seen Christian communities persecuted in Lebanon, you've seen them persecuted in Egypt, you've seen them persecuted in Turkey.
I know they were held back in places like Iraq because of Saddam Hussein, who had them in his upper echelons. But there
was a slow motion. There was a slow motion drive to expulsion. They were not being violently attacked, but they were leaving and exiting. They had better opportunities to exit. That was true in Syria as well. So Iraq.
So we didn't destabilize Iraq?
No, the Iraq War accelerated a lot of things that were happening anyway, both for good and for bad. But to put this on the United States, and that is one of the things that is very characteristic about the way Donald Trump talks about the world. He makes an indictment of American foreign policy always. He doesn't just, when he speaks about America first, in some ways it's also America most negatively. And it bothers me that so much of what he says on these subjects is the same thing as you hear on RT's propaganda.
Laura, quickly.
I think one of the things he said that was interesting regarding China, we didn't talk about China, he said in future trade deals, he said we can work with the Chinese, but when we come together for a deal, it's got to be mutually beneficial to both countries, or we'll have to go our separate ways. And I'm sorry, but it's about time someone said that with what's going on with our relationship with China.
We'll see how this all plays out. Here's my final question. Where do you see this ending? When does Bernie Sanders get out, and how long does it take John Kasich to do the same? Should he? Is it time?
He probably should have gotten out a long time ago and rallied to the only non-Trump alternative that was going to work. Bernie Sanders, I think, stays until California. He is trying to maximize his influence and also trying to lock the exit so that Hillary Clinton cannot pivot to the center. She's going to see, if Donald Trump is the nominee, a massive opportunity to win traditional Republican voters, people who live in suburbs, who are economically secure, and Bernie Sanders wants to stop her from doing that.
Laura?
Well, I think there are a lot of Republicans who are going to, think they can cut deals with Hillary on foreign policy, trade, and immigration, and they'll try to do just that.
Do you see Republicans here in D.C. coming around to Donald Trump after saying never Trump,
They're
never?
already coming around, Raymond. The calls are already being made, the appointments are already being had. A lot of people, they want influence, they want access, and they see this massive turnout of the American voters, and a lot of them are saying, well, we maybe have to do things a little bit differently from now on.
Very good. Laura Ingraham, David Frum, thank you both for being
no
here.
heroes in Washington, D.C.
There never are. Don't forget to check out the Laura Ingraham Show. Deets are at lauraingraham.com, and you can find Life Explained, from parenting to health to pop culture, at lifez.com. And David Frum's analysis and columns can be found at theatlantic.com. Thanks again.